Hello everyone, and welcome back to RHL Legends. So I need to tell you something. I started, as you can see at the time I've been recording this, the update of 7.5 has passed, and I'm sure many of you have noticed that I have been posting outdated footage. This will be in the description of all my videos, but I just want to say it out loud to this update. I started this game in 2022, and at the time my schedule was very tight. I was helping out with a social event, and I had no time to edit these videos. And back then I didn't know how cross-platform games worked, so my tablet was the only way for me to play the game. However, I later learned that with a plarium account, I can switch between my phone and tablet to keep my progress on the game. Unfortunately for my channel's relevancy, it was around May of 2023 by the time I had the chance to post any of it. And with that out of the way, let's get on to the normal video. I apologize yet again for my lack of relevancy. Okay, I had done summons, not off camera. Okay, I had done a whole episode about it, but when I did try to edit them down, the footage was messed up for some reason. It wouldn't work. It was like corrupted or something. So I had lost the entire piece of footage. And, well, a lot of things happened that made me really mad that it got corrupted. And, fortunately, I later on learned how to look at champions at level 1, so that helps. And I'm gonna show you how to do it, and one of the reasons why I was very mad about it. Okay, we're at the champion index right now, and this right here is a good reason why I'm mad. This is my first Shadowkin champion, and it was legendary. And the footage was unusable. That made me mad. But to look at them, fun fact, to look at them at level 1, you click the eye on how to get them, but see, if you click on their portrait, you get their level 1 stuff, so I'm glad I learned that. Anyway, let's get to the I wrote down everything I summoned, so I can salvage the situation. I'm just mad that the initial footage is now gone. Alright, we have Kyoko of the Shadowkin, my very first Shadowkin. I truly am not lying. And she looks awesome. Let's see what she can do. One-Eyed Beast. Attacks one enemy, will place 3 hits if the target is under 3 or more debuffs. Each hit has a 40% chance of placing a 25% weakened debuff for 2 turns. Alright. Her second skill, Blood Curdle. Attacks all enemies. Has an 80% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. After attacking, has an 80% chance of placing a HP burn debuff for 2 turns on all enemies that this skill did not place a decreased attack debuff on. Alright, pretty good. Kyoko's Horde. Places a 50% ally protection on all allies except his champion for 2 turns. Also places a block damage buff on his champion for 3 turns, then grants an extra turn. That is a really good skill, especially with the block damage. Her ascension skill, Wellspring, a passive skill. Every time this champion is hit with a critical hit, heals all allies by 15% their max HP. Then places a 60% 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. Aura skill increases ally defense in all battles by 30%. So yeah, my first Shadowkin, and she's a great legendary. On to the next one. Okay, next we have Marauder of the Shadowkin. And he looks pretty awesome. Oh, I did not notice that before. His teeth go that far. My goodness. Let's look at his skills. Sorry. Kanabo Jutsu. Attacks one enemy. The ascended skill has a 15% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Alright. Reckless Sweep. All enemies, 50% chance of placing a 25% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Alright. Roaring Challenge. Has a 50% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. Place a shield buff on this champion for 2 turns equal to 20% of their max HP. Also plays a 15% reflect damage buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Alright. Aura skill increases ally HP in all battles by 15%. Alright. That is Marauder of the Shadowkins. The next 2 I'm gonna show are I'm also quite mad about, because I didn't get them through a shard. I got them through the Bazaar in the Tag Team Arena. So this is how I would have summoned them, through fragments. And the fact that I couldn't get a chance to show that makes me a little mad. Alright, let's get to the 2 champions that did not need shards to summon them for the first time. Bloodhorn of the Skinwalkers. Alright. His skills, Killer Crescent. Attacks one enemy, 15% chance of placing a 25% decreased accuracy debuff for 2 turns. Alright. Intervene. Places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies for 2 turns. His passive, Deep Defense. If an ally is hit with a critical hit, places a 7.5 continuous heal buff on them for 1 turn. The Ascension skill doubles the heal. Aura skill increases ally HP and all faction crypts by 21%. I'm sorry I read that wrong. I didn't know what came over me. And now Huntress. Also a fragment summon from the Bazaar. She looks pretty good too. I like the headpiece. Let's see what she can do. Curved shot. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Sorry. 50% chance of placing stun debuff for 1 turn. Alright. Incinerate One enemy, 50% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff for 2 turns. Her Ascension skill, Whisper, places a 15% increased critical rate buff and a 15% increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns. Alright. We have now Margrave Greenhawk of the Sylvan Waters. I had attained him from a tournament, though still worthy show nonetheless. Hawk Talon attacks one enemy, places a 7.5 continuous heal for 1 turn on the ally with the lowest HP. Okay. Emotionless Rampage attacks 3 times at random. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. Also place a 30% reflect damage buff on this champion for 2 turns. Alright. Living Barricade. His Ascension skill places a 25% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Also places a 30% increased defense buff on this champion for 2 turns. Alright. Next we have Excruciator of the Demon Spawn. Her skills, Flicker Strike. 1 enemy, damage increases by 20% while attacking under a Veil buff. Heals his champion by 25% of the damage inflicted while attacking without a Veil buff. Sorry. Neck Snapper attacks 1 enemy. The Ascendant skill does a lot. Damage increases by 35% while attacking under a Veil buff. While attacking under a Veil buff, enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. That's handy. While attacking without a Veil buff, fully depletes the target's turn meter and fills its champion's turn meter equal to the amount of the target lost. Can only decrease the turn meter by up to 50% against bosses. This turn meter decrease cannot be resisted. Oh, pretty nice. That will definitely be great against the Ice Golem. And her passive, Invisible Predator, places the Veil buff on this champion for 1 turn at the beginning of each round. Places the Veil buff on this champion for 1 turn each time they kill an enemy. Okay. Wait. While attacking. Ooh. Okay, so she'll need a Veil buff in order to be good in the Frost Golem Keep, okay? Still pretty good though. Next we have Scion of the Demon Spawn. And he is terrifying to look at. I mean, look at that face. That's a face only your mother could love. Let's see his skills. Nightmare Kopesh. Attacks 1 enemy. Sorry, it seemed a little loud there. Has a 20% chance of placing a block active skills debuff for 1 turn. Evil Seed. 1 enemy, places a block buffs debuff and 100% heal reduction for 2 turns. We'll ignore any shields. Alright. Crawling Chaos. Removes all debuffs from this champion, then attacks all enemies. Places a 50% increased attack buff and a 30% increased critical damage buff on this champion for 1 turn after attacking. Alright. Ascension passive. Enemies under block active skills, block buffs, and heal reduction debuffs cannot decrease this champion's turn meter. Okay. Aura skill increases ally critical rate in dungeons by 24%. Alright. Next we have Malbranch. Alright. Gathering Inferno. 1 enemy. Ascension skill decreases bomb debuff detonation countdowns by 1 turn. Alright. Bident Mastery. Attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Plays a counterattack buff on his champion for 2 turns. Alright. Demonic Explosives. Attacks 1 enemy. Has a 60% chance of placing a bomb debuff that detonates after 3 turns. Okay. And the Nora skill increases ally speed in arena battles by 16%. Alright. Oh. We have Hound Spawn. Alright. Fire Breath. Attacks 1 enemy. Ascension skill has a 20% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Adamantine Teeth. Attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Has a 50% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 1 turn. Shattering Strike. Attacks all enemies. Will ignore defense and block damage buffs if the target has a freeze debuff. Only available when Hellfang is on the same team. Alright. And now we have Magister of the High Elves. I like the staff and the headpiece. Majestic Staff. Attacks 1 enemy. If the head is critical, places a 25% increased attack buff on a random ally for 1 turn. Alright. Anoint. Places a Revive on Death buff on a target ally for 2 turns. Heals all our allies by 10% the target's HP. This engine skill also places an effect damage buff on the target ally for 2 turns. Pretty good. Pretty good. Connoisseur. I think that's what it's called. Attacks all enemies. 50% chance of placing a 50% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. Ascension skill increases ally HP and faction grips by 22%. Alright. We have someone who has a striking resemblance to Magister, the Apothecary. Although I favor his color scheme over Magister. Scatterbolt attacks 3 times at random. Soothing Chant heals a target ally by 35% HP. This heal can be critical. This heal can be critical? Does that mean higher crit damage also affects how much heal it does? I'm gonna have to look that up later. Boon of Speed. Places a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. Attention skill also fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%. Aura skill increases ally defense in dungeons by 22%. Now we have Adjudicator. Like the design. I like the design, especially the crown. Insulation Cell. Attacks one enemy, 20% chance of placing a 50% heal reduction for 2 turns. Slowing Sanction. Attacks one enemy, 50% chance of decreasing the turn meter by 20%. Alright. Penalize. Attacks 2 times at random, 50% chance of increasing the cooldown of one of the target skills by 1 turn at random. Attention skill unlocks her aura, which increases ally accuracy in arena battles by 40. Alright. Now we have the Grand Master of the Bannerlords. Alright. Hammer Blows. Attacks one enemy 3 times. Steel Crusher. One enemy, 40% chance of placing a 25% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Alright. Demoralizing Display. One enemy, 50% chance of placing Provoke debuff for 1 turn. Alright. Aura skill. Unlocks with Ascension. Increases magic ally HP in all battles by 17%. An aura skill that relies on affinity. That's unique. Steadfast Marshal. I like the helmet. Thunderous Wallop. Attacks one enemy. Has a 50% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn if the target's HP percentage is lower than his champion's. Okay. Hold Fast. Places a 60% increased defense buff on his champion for 2 turns. Ascension skill grants an extra turn. Covered Retreat. Places a veil buff on all allies except his champion for 2 turns. That can work okay with Excruciator, with her need for a veil buff. Now we have Halberdier. Alright. Heal. Attacks one enemy. 25% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff for 2 turns. Bisect. Attacks one enemy. Will ignore shield and block debuffs. Ascension passive skill. Cleaving Axe. Increases critical damage by 40%. Alright. Anointed of the Barbarians. Mystic Chill. Attacks one enemy 3 times. Has a 24% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. Figure Theft, sorry. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 75% chance of stealing a random buff from the target. Sorry, it's not random, but still steals a buff. Sorry. Ascension skill, Chant of Violence. Fills a turn meter of all allies by 25%. Plays a 30% increased critical rate buff on all allies for 2 turns. Alright. A Marntine skeleton of the Undead Hordes. He looks pretty cool. Sorcerer's Bones. Attacks one enemy. 30% chance of placing a block debuff buff. Sorry, no. Not that. Block buffs debuff for 2 turns. Sorry. Tomb Blight. Attacks one enemy. 80% chance of placing a sorry. Placing a block active skills debuff for 1 turn. The Ascension skill also has an 80% chance of placing a 50% heal reduction for 2 turns. Rusted Targe. Attacks one enemy. 30%. Sorry. Places a 30% increased defense buff on this champion for 2 turns. Gonna have to wrap this up soon, hopefully. I didn't start with the epic champion of the Undead Horde, sorry. Anax of the Undead Hordes. He looks pretty sick. Pretty awesome. Piercing Shuttles. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense for 2 turns. Alright. Deathly Ichors. One enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 75% chance of placing a 50% decreased accuracy debuff and a 5% poison debuff for 3 turns. Alright. Soul Feast. One enemy, 75% chance of placing a 25% weakened debuff for 2 turns. Heals this champion by 50% of the damage inflicted. Alright. Revenant passive. Oh, wait. I got to do that. Okay, Ascension skill is a passive called Revenant. Places a 60% increased defense buff on this champion for 2 turns whenever their HP drops below 75. A 50% increased attack when their health drops below 50. And an active effect grants an extra turn whenever this champion's HP drops below 10%. Alright. That was another epic. Corpse Collector. She looks terrifying. Insidious Parasite. One enemy, 40% chance of placing a leech debuff for 2 turns. Hailfire. Attacks all enemies, 75% chance of placing a 100% heal reduction debuff and a 50% decreased accuracy debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. Sorry for the slow reading. Noxious Escape. Attacks 3 times at random. Each has a 75% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. Places a veil buff on this champion for 1 turn. Alright. Aura skill increases ally accuracy and arena battles by 40%. Not by percent, by 40. Not 40%, sorry. Frozen Banshee. Cool design. Oh wow, at this angle she is terrifying. Look at that. Super terrifying. Death's Caress. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Extension skill. Each hit has an 80% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. If the target is under poison sensitivity. Alright. Cruel Execution. Attacks one enemy. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 2% for each debuff on the target. Frostblight. One enemy places a 25% poison sensitivity debuff for 2 turns. Aura skill increases ally accuracy in arena battles by 35. Raider of the Orcs. Oh, forgot to do it again. Sorry. Alright. Savagery. Attacks one enemy. Attacks 2 times. The target HP percentage is higher than its champion's. Carnage. Attacks all enemies. 25% chance of placing a 15% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. Ascension skill doubles the decreased speed. Dominate. Attacks one enemy. 60% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Also has a 60% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Alright. Aura skill increases ally speed and faction crypts by 13%. Athel of the Sacred Order. I now have all of the 4 starter champions, so this is nice. Pretty great. Strike down. Attacks one enemy 3 times. Each hit has a 75% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff for 2 turns. Divine Blaze. Attacks all enemies. Ascension skill has an extra 15% chance of affecting a critical hit. Alright. Higher Blessing. Places a 25% increased attack buff on the champion for 2 turns. Places a 30% increased defense buff on this champion for 2 turns if this champion's current HP is less than 50%. Gains an extra turn. Alright, nice. Aura skill increases ally HP in all battles by 15%. Alright. Witness. I like her design. Long shot, one enemy, 50% chance of placing an extra hit. Alright, pretty nice. Support fire. One enemy, places a 30% increased defense buff on an ally with a low HP for 3 turns. Alright. Prayer of Comfort. Places a block debuff buff on all allies for 1 turn. Places a shield buff equal to 50% of this champion's max HP on all allies for 2 turns. And the Ascension skill doubles the shield buff. Aura skill increases ally resistance in faction crypts by 30. Pretty nice. I think, of the Knight's Revenant. A rare faction to get from. I like the headpiece. Paralyze. One enemy, 25% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Alright. Toxin. Has a 75% chance of placing a poison debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. Alright. Vitality Theft. Attacks all enemies, then heals his champion. The amount of which the champion is healed is equal to the damage inflicted. Sorry. Aura skill increase ally speed in arena battles by 16%. Skink of the Lizardmen. Slippery Strike. Attacks 1 enemy. Will ignore block damage and shield buffs. Withering Poison. 1 enemy. 50% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense for 2 turns. Ascension skill also places a 50% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns if the target has decreased defense debuff already. Catalyze. Attacks 1 enemy. The hit is critical if the target has heal reduction. Aura skill increases magic ally attack in all battles by 30%. Another affinity-based aura skill. Horden. Look, I love its design. Especially the helmet. Relentless Strike. Attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Grants an extra turn if the target is killed. Cool. Bloodletter. Attacks 1 enemy. 60% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Heals the champion by 10% of the damage. Alright. Burning Hatred. Places a 50% increased attack buff, a 30% increased critical rate buff, and a 30% increased speed buff on the champion for 2 turns. The Ascension skill grants an extra turn. Aura skill increases ally speed, and faction crips by 20%. Alright. Okay, I will be showing uncommon champions from here on out, so you're free to skip to the end, as they're not all that good, but I want to showcase them anyway. We have Stalwart of the Bannerlords. He has Rattle, 1 enemy, 25% chance of placing a block active skills debuff for 1 turn. I am sorry. I have no idea why I couldn't talk there. I'm so sorry. Headbutt. Attacks 1 enemy 2 times. 25% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Alright. We now have Fireblade. Alright. Skills. Burning Spear. 1 enemy. Places a 25% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns, if this attack is critical. Path of Flame. One enemy 3 times. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a 2.5 poison debuff for 2 turns. Alright. Elf Guard of the High Elves. I like her design. Puncture. One enemy, 25% chance of placing a 25% decrease attack for 1 turn. Alright. Impale. One enemy decreases the enemy's current turn meter by 50%. Alright. Intercessor of the Sacred Order. Alright. Mangle. One enemy, 15% chance of placing a 25% decrease attack for 1 turn. And Inspire places a 25% increased attack on all allies for 2 turns. Alright. Vigilante. I like the headpiece design with the cloth and helmet. Holy Blade attacks 2 times. Branding Iron 3 times at random. Each has a 50% chance of placing a 15% weaken debuff for 1 turn. Alright. Pilgrim. Alright. Thunderstrike attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit decreases target's turn meter by 5%. Okay. Pilgrim Shield applies a 30% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. Spirit Walker of the Barbarians. Alright. Cripple. 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 20% chance of placing a 25% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. That seems to be very common for non-common champions. Battle Trance removes all debuffs from this champion and places a 25% increased attack on all allies for 2 turns. Shield Guard. Alright. Uppercut attacks 1 enemy. 30% chance of placing a 15% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. Damage inflicted is proportional to defense. Battle Stance attacks all enemies. Fills the champion's turn meter by 20% on each critical hit. Damage inflicted proportional to defense. Ascension skill, Mighty Soul. Removes 1 debuff from the champion each turn. That's decent for early levels. And finally, our last champion on my list is Sandbow. I like the outfit. Let Fly attacks 1 enemy, boring. Vanevire Venom attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 15% chance of placing a weaken debuff for 2 turns. And with that, we have gone through all the champions I have summoned. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Catch you later.